correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve. I'm here this evening with my friend Steve once again.
No.
No? Oh, you're not here?
Well, I'm here, but
Okay. Whose figment of the imagination are you tonight?
I don't know. Well, apparently, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I completely lost that train of thought.
Oh, all right. Well, in any case, we're back for our usual weekly episode of discussion, shenanigans, etc. And we have a guest this week. But before we do that, we have our D20 Network Spotlight. And who's that this week, Steve?
That is Werewolf the Podcast.
Aha. Yes, this is your, one-stop podcast for everything related to Werewolf the Apocalypse. Josh Heath is your host, and he routinely has lots of cool and interesting guests from writers to enthusiasts and all sorts of people, and they talk about pretty much everything you can talk about for Werewolf the Apocalypse.
I just like the term enthusiasts when it comes to like players and people that know things about RPGs.
Well, see, you have people.
I think that's what our official title is.
It might be.
Because we're not experts. We're just enthusiasts.
There you go. But in any case, if you're into Werewolf the Apocalypse at all or curious about it, check out Werewolf the Podcast. There'll be a link for it in the show notes. And I think with that, let's get on to our guest, who this week is someone who's a prolific freelancer and, writer and game designer in his own right, that being Mr. Eddy Webb, who, well, amongst other things, is the creator of Pugmire, which I think is what we're going to talk a lot about tonight. So, hello, Eddy.
Hello. I'm also an enthusiast, but perhaps slightly more paid for one.
Well, you know, but where is the line really? Because most of the people I've talked to who get paid to do things with RPGs are as enthusiastic, if not more, than those of us who do it without getting paid.
Well, I mean, there is a kind of a running joke amongst some of the Onyx Path publishing freelancers is where they get their paycheck and then they immediately put it into our latest Kickstarter. So, so it's like, I guess you're kind of being paid, but
Is more funding the hobby / addiction.
right, exactly. Just first one's free, kid.
Yeah, just don't put the idea in their head that they can just stop paying you and give you, oh, here, we've already pre-backed the Kickstarter for you.
Right.
Oh, Kickstarter is such a never-ending hole of,
trap.
I want that.
It's a trap and
I
a
know,
half.
right?
And then, is it just me, or do you always end up with like 7 things all at once that you want to back?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then it'll go like 2 months and there's nothing.
And then like you start to be good. There's okay, no, I'm only back one at a time, and then you'll back them in certain order, and then like 7 things will be delivered into your house all at once. And it's like I don't have time to play all this.
Yeah.
That's just a normal occurrence for me. We have a whole segment on this show where we talk about games that I end up buying most of the games that we talk about.
You and me both, brother. Anyway, so boy, I don't know where to start, but I guess do you consider yourself best known as the creator of Pugmire, Ed? Or
I mean, I guess these days, it's honestly it's shifted. I mean, when I started, I was just some schlub who worked on some stuff, and then about 10 years ago, I got really well known for working on Vampire the Masquerade, and that was a fun few years. And then I was like, okay, I want to work on my own thing now. And I was like, I want to do a game about D&D with dogs. And people said, what? And I pitched it, and some people actually got it, and now I work on that, but I mean, I work on lots of other stuff too. So it's interesting to see what people come to me and know me as. Like most times it's like, oh, I loved your work on Vampire, or like, I loved your work on Pugmire. But every once in a while I get someone's like, I loved your work on Cartoon Action Hour. And I'm like, what? Wow, that's great. Thank you.
Well, I have noticed, because I will randomly put people's names in as like author searches on drive-through, you have
Mhm.
almost as many, if not more, credits than Ken Hite. So that says something in its own.
Last I checked, I haven't checked Ken's resume, but last I checked my resume, because I try to keep my website up to date, I have over 150 projects. So I've done some work.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think the last time I checked drive-through, it came up with 200 and some items you had credit on.
Oh my God, I'm behind.
I could check it now, but I don't type that fast. So
That's fair. To be actually, I think probably some of those are like way back in the ancient days, 2008. I did do a podcast, and for some reason, I thought loading each episode of the White Wolf blogcast at the time, and I thought loading each episode onto drive-through would be something people would want. So I mean, I'm sure like at least 50 of those are probably just podcast episodes.
still, you've got you've done a lot of work. Let's put it that way.
I have that. I have. I've been working freshly since 2002. So
Okay. So you briefly touched on what Pugmire is that it's kind of D&D with dogs. And while I've not read it, I have skimmed through it a little bit, and it feels, one, very, very clever to me, and two, like it's D&D without a lot of the stuff that confuses a lot of people.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
that
that was
is that
I was gonna say that
reasonably
is definitely
accurate?
by design. Yeah, I mean, that was my goal, right? Like, when I first started working on it, actually, let me take a step back. The actual premise of Pugmire proper is that it's actually far in the future of our world. So it's not post-apocalyptic in genre, but it's the same kind of idea. It's like thousands, maybe millions of years in our future. Humans are gone, and uplifted dogs, cats, and other species now aren't control the planet. So my initial pitch was more kind of Gamma World in flavor. But pretty quickly, I was like, I wanted to use, at the time, 3.5 D&D. Because the Kickstarter for Pugmire launched like right at the time that 5e also launched for D&D. So that was
Mhm.
really awkward. But my goal was, I was like, I thought 3.5 is okay, but there's a lot of stuff that comes with it. And
Mhm.
so my design goal was I wanted to make the D&D game that everyone remembers, not the D&D game that actually exists. And so there was even a lot of attempts to kind of streamline. So like the example I gave when I was talking to Onyx Path originally about it was, it's like when you rebuild a classic car, you can try to get as many original parts as possible and make it as authentic as possible, but a lot of restorers will also just like, okay, but let's put like a modern suspension in, let's put anti-lock brakes in, things that you can't really see, but certainly make the experience much more pleasurable when you're actually driving it.
Mhm.
And that's kind of my goal. Was like I want D&D to be fun to play and not have to have some of the rigmarole that comes with it.
No, I like how you phrase it as the D&D everyone remembers, not the one they actually printed, because I think there is a significant difference in what do you want to say, the memories a lot of us have, or even just
Hmm.
what we think of as the game and then what we get into at the table.
Absolutely. And like about 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, you know what I want to do is I want to run an AD&D game, first edition, straight by the book. And then I read the book and I was like, I do not want to do this anymore. Because the AD&D that was in my head was not the AD&D on the page.
Yeah, that's I can identify with that. I didn't play much first edition AD&D. I cut my teeth in the later days of well, 2ER as it were.
Mm.
Actually Dark Sun was the first setting I ever played D&D in.
Oh, wow.
But I fell in with a group in college, and that's where I started gaming, that just played a lot of different stuff, but our kind of like the hub game, if you will, was this big Call of Cthulhu game.
Hmm.
And so it was, but then this person ran Cyberpunk, and this person ran Dark Sun, and this person, I ran Rifts. And so, we had
Ooh.
this big swirling thing of, different people running different stuff. And it was really a neat experience. And I think, it kind of informed where I am now, and that, yeah, D&D is cool, but there's all these other games and all these other settings.
Mhm. And honestly, I mean, I have been on record as being somewhat of a Rifts apologist, so I'm with you on this. But also, I think Rifts is another one of those games that you remember it being different than what it actually is when you go back and look at it again.
Hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah, I've got quite a collection of the books, and yeah, every time I open them, I go, yes, there's a reason why I haven't run this in 20 years.
Oh, right. That dust is there for a reason.
It's like read, mega damage. Never mind, I'm done.
Yeah, I've actually got the Savage Rift stuff that I keep meaning to deal with, but I
Oh,
don't
that's so
know
good.
base Savage Worlds that well, so kind of want to get that grokked before I add the rifts on top of it.
No, actually, fair enough. Actually, one of the reasons why I got reacquainted with it is because I don't know if it's come out yet, but I did do one of the supplements for Savage Rifts, and because my friend Sean Fannin was like, "Hey, I want you to write some riff stuff." I'm like, "Man, I love riffs." You know, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll give you all the PDFs. You can research stuff." So cool, great. What do you want to write? It's like you should write vampires, and I'm like, "Oh, really? You're gonna talk to the vampire guy to write vampires? Really, Sean?" But I was like, okay, no, that'd be fun. Let's do because it'd be a different take. And that's when I realized because I got the PDFs they're searchable, so I could just search through all the PDFs, and I've learned that vampires are mentioned in every Riffs book, all of them, and I'm like, oh my god,
What they're up to about 45 or so at this point.
yeah. Now some of it's like, hey, you might want to have the vampire weapons, so we're gonna reprint those here. So some of it's like just reprinted material, but I don't know that when I have like 75 million PDF hits in my search. Just like
Yeah,
click,
no
click,
kidding.
click. But it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah. Anyway, we can get more into that, but yeah, I'm really, like I said, I haven't read Pugmire, but it feels like you've done a lot with kind of the tropes of how people think about dogs and how
hmm
people think dogs think about people.
hmm
And like I said, what I've skimmed of it, it just feels really clever and like got to be honest, as much as I'm not a big fantasy gaming person, like I kind of want to play this at some point just because it feels fun.
And that was definitely a goal, right? Like when I started working on it, one of the things that I have firmly believed as a designer for quite a while now is that D&D is ultimately a genre. People say it's a fantasy game. It really isn't. It's a D&D game. Now, since D&D has become popular, there's a lot of fantasy that's spun out of it that emulates D&D. So that works well. It's like, okay, so this also looks like D&D. But if you look at fantasy like from the 70s and earlier, fantasy is very different. And there are still lots of spurs of fantasy now that don't really hearken to what D&D does specifically. So if you look at I'm going to go into design nerdity, which I hope that the RPG podcast will be okay with, but
Yeah, but we're all good with it.
We're the only people that matter. So if the
fair enough.
audience
As long as
doesn't
you
like it,
two are
too bad.
happy, everybody else doesn't. Watch the listeners tank while I talk about this. But so in game design, there's an idea called the core game design loop, right? Which is this is the thing that you do on a regular basis. For Gumshoe, it's you go into a scene, you collect the clues, you make meaningful dice rolls, and you go on to the next scene, you collect more clues until you ultimately solve the mystery. That's really the core gameplay loop for Gumshoe. For D&D, it is buy equipment, kill monsters, get golden experience to buy better equipment, to get better powers, to kill bigger monsters. That's the core gameplay loop. And D&D does that really, really well. They've spent 40 plus years refining that loop. It's so good that video games started emulating that gameplay loop, and now video games have refined it even further. And that's fine. I play D&D Alive, 3 different 5e games. D&D does that well. But when you apply that to you playing a fantasy version of your favorite pet, it gets really awkward real damn fast. So I was like, okay, I have to look at different fantasy. I have to look at other kinds of fantasy, like Redwall, like something like the Fievel movies that Disney had, Basil Baker Street, things where animals are in fantastic situations, but they're not doing this kind of loop. And I had to make sure the rules adapted for that. So one of the first things I did was I got rid of experience points and I got rid of money. If you no longer have any financial or mechanical incentive to kill creatures, then killing characters isn't necessarily your go-to move. It is going to be for some people, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. The game certainly permits that. But if you want to run away or make friends or, sneak past, whatever, those are all equally mechanically viable options now. Because at the end of the day, when the story is over, you go up in level. That's the only qualifier for level up. And money is just another kind of vague piece of equipment. It's like, how much money do you have? I have some coins. Okay, that's enough. You can bribe the guard and move on. You don't track any of that. So you're not shaking down corpses for spare cash anymore. The rolling bums in the alley method of gameplay. You're not doing that. It doesn't play well with what Pugmire wants to do. Other things are like, with the cycle, there is a mechanical need to rotate equipment, right? The +1 sword is something that's really great when you first get it, but then after a few levels, the game needs to give you something bigger so that you can then replace it with the new mechanical thing. So you get your +2 sword, your +3 sword, your +1 armor, whatever. And what that leads to is throwing away what used to be a very valuable item or giving it to someone else and taking the new item. So instead, I now have magical items that actually get more powerful as you get up in gameplay. I wanted more of the Excalibur thing of like, this is the object that I have. It's useful. And there's even some rules in there for if you adventure for this and then you give that item to someone else, they get all of that ability too. So then there's a reason why I've saved this sword for 3 generations. Your grandfather carried this sword, and his son carried a sword. Now it's you're my daughter will not carry this sword. There's a mechanical reason to do that now.
Okay, so it sounds like almost you've got where you're, and I know I'm perhaps kind of oversimplifying, but almost your equipment levels with you, or your equipment levels also, sort of.
Yeah. So basically, what actually happens is, one of the things I did is I discovered that lots of people like to make custom builds. That's something they find fun in character creation. So in D&D, can't really do that unless the system explicitly gives you permission to. It's at this level you get this thing, and next level you get the next thing. Only Magic users can really customize to any kind of meaningful degree. There's a couple of other exceptions now in 5e, but 3.5 era, that was pretty much all you got. So instead, what I did is I broke everything out into what I call tricks, because dogs. And you basically pick which tricks you want each level. And some of those tricks you can refine if you choose to. Instead of getting a new trick, you can make your existing trick more powerful. So let's say you're playing a ratter, which is my equivalent of a rogue, and you get a direct strike, which is backstab effectively. If you want to, you can pick up trap sense at next level, or you can say I want to make my backstab more effective, and you refine that trick and it gets more powerful. Weapons are, in some armor and some magic items, the same way. They can come with tricks, and some of those tricks can be refined. And the key is that from a purely selfish level, there's no difference between refining a trick on equipment and refining a trick on yourself. But from a game world perspective, if I refine a trick on the sword and they give a sword to somebody else, they have all of the benefits of those refinements. So it's more of a long-term investment. Of course, the flip side is if you lose your sword, then temporarily you're not going to have access to those tricks. So there is kind of a trade-off to that. But you have the option to have the family heirloom that way because you have specifically invested some of your character levels into that item.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also, I think, creates the what do you want to say, the trope that you see in movies or film, whatever. Hey, here, take my sword. It does this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think that's a neat addition.
Yeah, I like that addition because it also gives incentive because, like you stated, in D&D, it's a lot of, well, I don't need this anymore because it doesn't give me the stat bonus, but it gives the incentive for role play to be like, well, I'm attached to this. Like, I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this.
Right. And whenever I made these decisions, I mean, I was ultimately thinking of what makes for a fun game, but also whenever I was on the fence about a decision, I always go, can I tie this to dog behavior? And one of the things that looking at my own dogs is like, sometimes you can give them all the toys in the world. It's like, this toy's fun, but this old beat up toy I got 2 years ago, always go back
favorite.
to it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But so mechanically, if it's like, yes, I know this sword is beaten up. I got this one at level 1, but gosh darn it, this is the thing I really want to commit to, and I'm just going to really invest in.
Yeah, my dog is very much that way, and she also, I don't know if anybody else's dogs do this. She has types of toys that she prefers.
Mm-hmm.
Like for mine, for whatever reason, stuffed squirrels or anything football shaped.
Nice.
And don't ask me why, because it's been multiples of both, but
Mhm.
those are consistently her favorites.
Yeah, my boxer, she loves crinkly toys. So squeaky toys is like, whatever. But if it crinkles and rattles, like, oh, what's that? Give me that. I gotta play with that.
So, I don't know, do you wanna get into a little bit maybe, like, and the only one I've looked over at all is the core book, and I know you've got some expansions that have, cats and assorted other
Mhm.
creatures, but it looked like what you did in a lot of ways is you broke out some of the, what do you wanna say, more common traits associated with different dog breeds and kind of used them much in the same way that D&D uses race
Yeah.
or heritage or whatever they're calling it now. I haven't followed it that closely, to be honest.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's kind of where it started, right? Like, the idea came about when I was walking my two pugs, and one of them was elderly, one's a little younger, and so the younger pug named Puck was very kind of, I'm gonna go forward, I'm gonna make friends and say hi to everybody. And Murray was the older black pug, and he was just like, I'm just gonna stay back and watch you do all the stupid things and then learn from that experience. And it just popped in my head. It's like, oh, so you're standing back because you cast spells and you're into high intelligence and you're running into battle because you're a berserker and doing all of the charisma things. And then I realized that pugs are terrible at battle because they're all charisma and nothing else. I mean, they certainly have low constitution. And then I started putting pieces in my head together, and I was like, "Oh, okay, but that actually kind of tracks." And so I kind of looked at like different breed groups, and immediately became just confused slash disgusted at how all that works. But it did give me some interesting kind of demarcations of companions as a concept and worker dogs as a concept. And when I started seeing those commonalities, I realized they mapped to most of the D&D attributes, which is really at its core all Heritage does, frankly. I mean, it gives you a couple of special benefits and it gives you a bump to a stat. And I was like, well, the bump to stat part seemed to work pretty well.
On that or
Sorry?
no, okay, apparently my connection's being a little weird or something.
Oh. Um, so I was like, okay, so this kind of maps pretty well to heritage, and that way I don't have to have dogs as one group and cats as another group. I can have different variations of dogs in a way that makes sense. And then during the Kickstarter we did, I got a fantastic email from someone who was a dog behavior specialist, and she's a very long email, gave me so much good information. But one thing she said that stuck with me is that all dog group slash training exercises amount to is how far along in the prey cycle does the dog get before the training stops them. So if a dog is a hunting dog, it's all the way to the end. Basically, you hunt until I tell you to stop hunting. Pugs have no prey drive. They're basically right at the top, just done. But there are gradations in there. It's like, chasing or hunting or chasing something down or whatever. So that's what a lot of dog behaviors do is they try to figure out which point in their prey drive the dog is inclined to go and do they need to curb that at any point. And it breaks down to about roughly 6 groups. So I was able to kind of shuffle some things around at that time and adjust them and dial them in a bit better. And then from there, it's like, okay, I want to do something that looks a bit like the traditional D&D classes. But one of the things I wanted to do, because I've seen it, this is more the D&D, you remember how the D&D that actually exists. D&D that actually exists tends to really encourage single attribute specialization. Usually there is a single attribute that a class is good at, and you just kind of build the entire character around that one thing. And I was like, I really want to divide that up, particularly spellcasters, right? It's like basically, if you're a wizard, you dump everything in intelligence. If you're a cleric, you dump everything in wisdom. And there's just no mechanical reason not to. I wanted to divide that up because I felt dogs were a little more complicated than that. So I said I want to have 2 attributes for each calling, and that started to shape the look of them. So like I was like, I had my wizard class. I gave not intelligence but also charisma, and it's like, okay, so there's a little bit of bard in here, and so it's a little more like it became like called the artisans, which are people who study objects, but also because these are mysterious objects and dogs value ancient history, they also kind of have to talk to other people to learn more to make themselves more powerful to get better understand what they acquired. So they have to be social in order to get that kind of communication going. Uh, um, with the same thing with the guardians. It's like those are my warrior class. They also have charisma because I wanted to have that slide towards general as well as door guard. It gives us some fluidity in there. Also, because I think that one of the things that D&D 4e did really really well was make non-strength based, non-dexterity based warriors interesting. And one of them is the tactics master that you can actually direct people. And then they now have it in 5e. At the time, I was like, this is so amazing. So my callings were shaped by the setting and also shaped by my mechanical needs. And some of them are going to be really close. Like if you just look at them with a basic knowledge of D&D, you're going to, oh, that's this, oh, that's that. And you're going to be mostly right. Because I wanted to have people, the D&D they remember. It's like, oh, I remember playing wizards. Wizards are cool. Which one's the wizard class? That one. Cool. Okay. And I get spells. Great. That's what I want. I want spells and I want to be smart. Well, that's also there. Great. But there's this extra layer there. Oh, I can also do this. I can also do that. That's new and interesting. And that helps to set my setting out a bit more. But again, it's really just relatively small moving pieces, design pieces around kind of behind the scenes. So that way, the person, when you're approaching the book, it's like, it's pretty straightforward. But my goal is to kind of make it as easy as, get rid of all the stuff that isn't strictly necessary to the game I want to make, and then make everything else as clear as possible. I have had several people say to me that they didn't understand 5th edition D&D. They played Pugmire and were then able to go back to 5th edition D&D and use that knowledge to better understand 5e, which I think is a
Cool.
huge compliment.
Yeah, I would as well. Now, it also feels like because of the way you've kind of de-emphasized single attributes, that from a just a design standpoint, it's probably also, what do you want to say, with advancement, I'm going to guess it's maybe a little more flexible than D&D.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. It is entirely possible to take a spellcasting class and choose not to take spells. It is an option no one has ever taken, but it is there. If you wanted to play an artisan who just doesn't study magic, but is all in on being a charming, suave person, you can totally do that. And you have some arcane knowledge to back it up, and it's interesting, but you just can't cast spells. It is possible to make a shepherd, which is the cleric class, who's all in on healing or has 0 healing ability and is just extremely knowledgeable and has a lot of depth of knowledge and history. As much more of a scholar archetype. You can play that. That is definitely my goal. I designed it so that way there are 2 kind of pretty clear paths. There's one that's really obvious for people who are familiar with these games. Like if you play the Ratter, which is my rogue analog, here's the backstab, here's the trap sense, here's, all of the stuff that you expect a thief character to do. But also you have second wind. And it's like, well, that's not something I expect to see with a thief character because they live on the streets. They're tough. They have to survive.
Mhm.
So that survival build is also something you can dig into if you want to. Like I said, with the Guardian, there is much more the tactician build where you're not really doing much of fighting, but you're actually giving buffs to other people to help them fight better. That is absolutely a viable build. They're minor builds, but also it's not like D&D where you have basically alternate classes or multi-classes. Instead, it's I could pick this and I could pick this, and you can kind of pick and choose a la carte and build that out however you see fit. So if you want to have a thief with all of the abilities that you're kind of okay at, that's kind of like old school AD&D first edition, where it's like I have a little bit of all the thief skills. Or you can dig deep and say, no, I just want to be an assassin. And so it's nothing but backstab. I refine that thing 3 or 4 times. I build up my dexterity, and I'm just going to just murder people in the streets because I'm that kind of dog. You can play that too. And there's nothing in the rules saying, well, to do that, you have to pick these specific options. You can, each level are going, well, I think I want this now. Well, I think I want that now. Because I wanted each level for players to actually have a meaningful choice. Because one of the things I think D&D falls down on, at least modern iterations of, is you could program it. Like, I mean, I've used D&D Beyond and learned I click it. It gives you a few things you click on. Maybe you get like a choice of a new skill or something, and then that's it. But most levels, you click the button and just a bunch of numbers go up, and you have nothing to do with it. And on a higher level, that's still interesting and fun. Well, I got the powers I have right now, cool and interesting, and I got a new power access maybe. But I do like it when my character progresses, I have an interesting choice in front of me to how my character is going to grow.
Well, I think this goes to what you were saying a little while ago about the core gameplay loop, and where with the basic loop for Dungeons and Dragons is kill things, get money, experience, get stuff,
hmm
slash get better stuff, and where it's not so much about development. And it sounds like what you've built here allows for it to be much more about character development. And I'm guessing when you're talking about these choices and whatnot, let's say you were building a more spellcaster that's slinging spells, but then something happens and they decide, you know what, no, I just want to learn all this stuff, that you can just kind of like put it on pause and go in this other branch
hmm
of the same thing, but then you could come back. Or am I reading that correctly from what you're telling me?
You're absolutely right. Because how spellcaster tricks work is that each level you get a couple of spells. Because I mean, I didn't want to make you get more spells choice. Like there's a small trickle of spells you always get, but you can say I can refine that spellcaster trick to get a whole bunch of spells. So I get 6 spells at that level. You can refine a trick to say, okay, I only get 2 spells, but now I can get the next level of spells up, so I can get level 2 spells now. Or you could say, I'm not refining trick at all. I'll just take my 2 spells and I'm going to get like occult knowledge. And I'm going to get a thing that gives me advantage on lore checks or whatever. I think it's one of the ones that's available. Or in Monarchies of Mal, there's one where it's like, I'm going to cast my spells better, just generally better, but I'm not getting any new spells necessarily. So you have, right, those options where it's like, I've been noticing my group needs this. So regardless of what on-rails progression the game is giving me, I can choose, you know what? My players are kind of dumb and need some help getting healing, so I'm actually going to pick up the healing trick as the shepherd. I was going to kind of just get some more spells, but I better get the healing trick, make sure my healings are really, because I have to patch these idiots up constantly.
But I like that because because that is one thing that I've grumbled with the way most of 5e has been done, is that like you kind of pick a path at the beginning of, past third level.
hmm
Aside from multi-classing, you're on a rail.
Yep.
And yeah, you can do stuff with different feats and whatnot, but and look, I mean, Russ Morrissey made a whole new system out of it,
hmm
with level up. But it sounds like what you did obviously came significantly before that, and addresses a lot of the same issues, but also again, it's the D&D that we remember fondly, as you're kind of saying it, not necessarily the one that's in the rule book that we most of the time don't want to be bothered to look up.
Right. It's definitely aspirational D&D. I think is the best way to kind of describe it.
Mhm.
Uh, and like one of the design decisions I've made, which has been one of the more controversial ones. Well, no, getting rid of the money was the most controversial one. One of the more controversial ones is I have a level cap at 10. There are some optional rules because there's nothing mechanically that says you can't just keep taking more tricks because there's no XP chart, there's no linear progression, so just keep taking more stuff. But game is written, you cap at level 10, and there's 2 kind of reasons for that. From a design perspective, every version of D&D, in my opinion, always goes wrong around level 10. Beyond level 10, the power gets wonky. That's the point where the slow build of spellcasters overtakes the faster build of martial characters, and spellcasters become intensely overpowered around that point. The monster math gets kind of wobbly around 12 or 13 in 5e and at different points in other games. But also a lot of games these days, frankly, most games wrap up around level 10. We're just not, people don't play for 20 years the same characters anymore, right? So there was for a mechanic reason, but also from an aesthetic standpoint, level 10 feels like it's not quite enough time. And that's the relationship we have with dogs. We never quite have enough time with them. So I wanted to say, you know what? You're done adventuring. You could still be an old dog and you just can't learn new tricks. It's a good way to remember. Level 10, no more tricks. But then the game's like, well, now you can make new characters, and that sword you've been investing in, now you can hand it off to your pup and play your pup as a character, and they can go off and have. So I wanted to reflect that dog experience. It goes back to, like I said, not only is aspirational D&D, but also is specifically D&D tunes to talk about the relationship we have with pets. It's not, there's something else, is that it's not just a funny animal game. It's a funny game that has animals in it, absolutely. But it's specifically about dogs, cats, lizards, birds. The relationship we have specifically with domestic animals. A lot of the game, the setting, the rules are geared around that specific experience. And so if you want to make rules to have chinchillas or bat characters, I'm not going to stop you. It's your game. Have fun. But that's not the game I'm making. And so a lot of design decisions, I have put a lot of thought into why I made those decisions. And sometimes people find that interesting. Sometimes they're just like, there are also benefits at the table, and so they're more interested in that, and that's fine. It doesn't matter to me, because I do try to think of both sides of that. Is this fun to play, and also how does this resonate with the setting I want to make? But there are a lot of times when people cram their pet idea into the OGL. I don't see that same thought happening. It's just, oh, this is the most popular system, so I have to kind of shove it in there with my foot and make sure it works with the D20. And it doesn't resonate the same way.
No, I get exactly what you're saying, because I think there's a lot of games right now, especially with, the OGLs, that, oh, it's 5e compatible. Well, that's fine, but the mechanics of how 5e works don't serve the themes you're trying to do.
Right.
And that's where, correct me again if I'm wrong here, well, Pugmire is going to feel very familiar to anyone who's played any amount of 5e. It is not marketed as a quote unquote 5e compatible game, correct?
Yeah, no, it is derived from, but the marketing point is because, of course, as the OGL, you can't use D&D language. It's a refined and simplified version of the world's most and it's pretty easy to eyeball OGL stuff and cram it into the game. I mean, I wanted to give some flexibility in that front, but at the end of the day, if the decision was make my game better or make my game compatible with D&D, I always went with make my game better. And so I've certainly had people like, well, I've tried to put this in, it doesn't quite work. And it's like, that's because you're using D&D. And my game isn't exactly D&D. Most people embrace the spirit of that, because also I am a gamer of a certain age. So yeah, I mean, I name dropped AD&D. I mean, so I grew up very much in a culture of you keep fiddling with numbers until it works at your table. And so I wanted to embrace that spirit with this game. And there are lots of people who definitely are getting on board with that. But I recognize there are some people who are like, I want to play the books as written, and I want them to exactly work. And that's why I'm very clear this is not a D&D source book, because you will not have a pleasurable experience if that is your expectation. This is a completely self-contained game, and all of the stuff that comes with it also works in that self-contained ecosystem. If you put OGL 5e stuff into it, caveat emptor, because it's not going to work the way necessarily you intended it to.
That's fair. No, but I appreciate the fact that you went that route and said, look, does this make it 5e compatible, or does it make it a better game? And always went to better game.
Mhm.
I find it frustrating because, we've done episodes about this in the past, and I think we give D&D a lot of grief that maybe it doesn't deserve all of, but at the same point, I feel like too, it's like people just go, well, everyone wants to play 5e, so if I do this, that'll make my game sell better. Well, maybe it will, but what'll really make your game sell well is if it's a good game.
Yeah, there's a company who shall remain nameless, but I ran into their table at a convention, and they had a big banner behind their game, behind their booth. I didn't know the name of the game. I could see it was a fantasy game from the art they had. The only text I could see from a distance was better than D&D. And I'm like, I have so many questions. But the first one is why? Why is that the most important part of your message? Because that's such a subjective term, and you're now completely defining your game by D&D. So if you're saying, I want to make this game because OGL is the most popular rule system in the market, that's fine. I applaud you for that decision. But you either have to understand the core design loop of D&D and make sure your setting conforms to that, or do what I did, which is recognize that that the game needs to bend to fit my intent and hope that people come along for the ride. And I have not seen people, I mean, I've seen people trip over minor rules. That's to be expected. I still do it occasionally. I've seen recently people do the reverse, where it's like, I have certain skill set, and people are like, roll the skills. It skills exist. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's for Pugmire, because I added some skills in Pugmire because I thought they were useful. Initiative works differently, and I've had people just straight up use my initiative system instead in their D&D games. The cross inspiration certainly works. But I mean, like, if you wanted to make a cyberpunk game where your job is you're hired mercenaries and you go off and you kill people for money and take their stuff to become bigger mercenaries to take on even bigger corporations, D&D is fantastic for that game. Just basically find or replace spell with cyberware and you're pretty much done. I mean, it's obviously more work than that, but the core design loop reinforces that gameplay. But if you want to do a My Little Pony game, you have a lot more work ahead of you to try to make those two things balance.
Yeah. So yeah, it's, well, like we said, the system. And I had a conversation a couple weeks ago with Australian designer by the name of Steve D, and we had a decent amount of conversation about how system does matter, because
Mm-hmm.
different systems emphasize different things and permit different things, and you need to have the system reinforce and permit the things that you want the game to be about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think, like you said, if your selling point is that your game is better than D&D, well, one, that's as you said, that's a very subjective thing. Okay, for me, what's better than D&D could mean that, well, in my case, maybe it's just not that D&D style fantasy.
Right.
For
Mm-hmm.
someone else, that could mean it has a lot more detail. Like if you're a Warhammer fan, your expectation of what you want out of a fantasy game is going to be a lot different than D&D.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't think, so to speak, if you want to call it that comparative marketing is probably a good choice from a long-term perspective anyway.
Right. But I mean, to go back to System Matters, I mean, I've had people actually ask me, it's like, why use D&D as a base at all, right? Like, I publish it through Onyx Path Publishing, so I had the option to use their in-house system, which is moderately to heavily derived from the classic White Wolf games like World of Darkness and whatnot, the D10 tool system.
Mm-hmm.
I could have used Fate or any other off-the-shelf OGL besides D&D, but I specifically wanted, again, that nostalgic experience. I wanted that feeling of, I remember when I had fun playing these games and what that experience was like, and then mapping that nostalgia onto our fondness for dogs. And it works kind of both ways in my experience, is that people's fondness for dogs gives them more fondness for this style of play. Um, I am with you in the sense that I generally, if I have options between traditional fantasy or something else, I would probably try something else. I'm not against traditional fantasy, but it's not my jam. I'm much more of a sci-fi or horror guy myself.
Mm-hmm.
Superheroes as well. I have a lot of fondness for those. But I know what D&D can do, and I know what it does well. I recognize it's very popular, and a lot of people really dig it. So I'm not going to harsh their buzz by telling them their game is stupid, because it's not. But I am comfortable saying, if I'm going to make my game, I mean, on a design level, I gave you all these kind of highfalutin, here's how it maps to dogs, and here's the psychology behind blah, blah. But also on some level, if I am going to make a D&D based game, I'm going to get rid of all the stuff that I hate about D&D, because it's my game. I have that option to do that. It's like, I think shopping is dumb, so we're getting rid of money, stuff like that. I just don't. But also, like, I wanted to have things like, let's play with the genre a bit. Another thing that's funny to me is that D&D's become such a fossilized thing, and it's not what it always was. When you go look back at late 70s, early 80s D&D, when they had no clue what they were making. They're like, I don't know, let's put some Conan in here and some Lord of the Rings, and there's one module where literally you're dungeon crawling through a spaceship, because they didn't know what they were doing. And to me, that's my D&D, right? That's that bonkers, wild, we don't know what's going on, so let's just throw it on there and see what works. I love that era of D&D.
Yeah, throw it at the wall, see what sticks, and
Hmm.
yeah, I very impressed. I'm very excited to get to run some Pugmire because I have friends and family that are like D&D, and then it's like, well, but you like dogs? Well, yeah, I have a game.
I have the game for
Um,
you.
I have a game for you, and I'm very excited to get to run some of that here in the near future. But so let me ask you this, just sort of not to get away from Pugmire, but is Pugmire the thing you're proudest of at this time?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, it is because it's creator owned, right? Like it's the only thing I have where I'm not written it for hire. Written it for the company, I get a paycheck, and then I walk away from it. It's something that it's something I own, and therefore there's a large part of me in it. And so I'm proud of that because it's of all the other projects I can look at, people can criticize them, and I'm gonna go, okay, well, you don't like it, that's fine. If someone criticizes Pugmire, I'm like, what are you doing? I will chase you off Twitter because you hate my dog game. How dare you? You know, I'm not really, but I mean, I have that instinct that because there's a lot of me in there. Um, but you know, I always feel like I could do better. So uh, I can't point to one thing and say I'm proudest of this. If you had to put an aggregate, yeah, Pugmire's at the top. Obviously, there's a lot of things that I'm really happy with how it worked out. But also, I started working on this 2014, so it's 8 years to me, and it's nearly a decade. And so I look back, it's like, I could have done this better. I've learned a lot about 5e specifically about this. I've learned about I'm a better designer than I was 8 years ago. So there's always the next thing, and so I always try to challenge myself. And I find that sometimes I'm proud of very small things, like I did a project for Trinity Continuum Aberrant, which is a kind of sci-fi superhero game. And I was like, okay, but what if it also had professional wrestling? And Rich Thomas, the owner, is like, I really don't want to do professional wrestling. I was like, oh, just give me 10,000 words, which is like 20 pages. And he's like, okay, fine. So I crammed an entire pro wrestling RPG / Street Fighter homage into 10,000 words. And like the act of doing that, the 5 people who will appreciate that game, I will love them forever because I know it's not. But I was very proud of how can I condense all of these tropes and genre conventions into extremely small space and still make it playable and fun. And it's a bit too tight in retrospect. I mean, even now it's like I could have done that. I've done this better because it's been a couple of years distance from it. So I mean, there's things I'm proud of that from pure design perspective, it's really hard to point people and say, I'm this small tweak I made, it's invisible to you, but it changes everything and I love it. I'm also proud of things like kind of adjacent to it. I've had a great relationship with the YouTube channel Extra Credits. They do these 7-minute educational cartoons about game design, and I've kind of become their de facto tabletop writer. I've written 15 scripts with them now. And I've been able to talk about some really interesting topics through that and spark some interesting conversations with that. But the proudest, I think, is that I've had people come to me and tell me things like, your game saved my life. And that's not a check, that's not a word count, that's not a sign. That's not something I could point to and say, well, this is the thing that saved your life. It's just something about means another person is still on this planet. Or another person decided that they wanted to reveal their true gender to the world. Or someone decided that they were going to work past some of their difficulties in life rather than let it succumb to them. I have had a good relationship with a group called the Badana Group, and they basically are licensed therapists who actually use tabletop role-playing games in their therapeutic sessions. And I was like, this is really cool. How can I help? And they're like, well, we appreciate you coming to us because apparently Pugmire is like extremely useful with at-risk kids. And I'm like, what? You know, it's like, it's a game about dogs with battle axes.
Wow.
I don't even understand what's happening here. But I mean, they've been able to point to like, here's all the things in this game that has been resonating with our clients and our kids. And it's not stuff that I put in there intentionally, so I can't claim credit for it, but I'm proud of the fact that people are looking at something I made and becoming or helping improve their lives. That's just amazing to me. And I can't claim an ounce of credit for it. It's just I happen to just my silly dog game hit at the right moment. But I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that something I have a piece in can do that to me. So it's a really long, rambling answer. It probably didn't answer your question at all, but it's
No, you did. That's perfect.
So that's really cool. Now, kind of just because you've hit on it a couple times here, I know there are, Pugmire is the core book or whatever,
yeah.
but I know you've got a cats expansion, and I believe you have a couple of other expansions which add assorted other, as you mentioned, lizards, etc.
Mhm.
What's the whole family at this point? I guess is a better way to ask it.
Yeah, so there's kind of two levels to it. Well, three technically. There's Pugmire and there's Monarchies of Mount. Monarchies of Mount is a separate, complete game. It's set in the same world as Pugmire. It's cross-compatible with Pugmire, but you play cats instead of dogs. And this was because from my time working at White Wolf, is that you have a vampire game and a werewolf game and a mage game, and those are all separate games that kind of connect, but they never really connected the way that they were supposed to. So I was like, I want to kind of do that. I want to have a dog game and a cat game, and it was important to me at the time because I was like, I want to make sure cat people feel like they're being equally represented, and I also wanted the cat experience to be equally shaped by the mechanics. There were certain tweaks in the rules as to how cats work that are distinct to their version of the game. They're minor and they're articulated very clearly, so you know exactly what they are. But if you are a cat person and just don't want to deal with dogs at all, you can pick up Monarchies of Mao and have a perfectly satisfying experience, and other stuff adds to that. I don't know if I would do that again because it's caused more problems than it helped. But I've had people who genuinely like it, and it did allow me to do things like I can kind of dial in the darkness a little bit. Mao is a little more intrigue. There's more Game of Thrones, not to the explicit level, but I mean in terms of the intrigue and the darkness. I mean, it's a visually darker book. So I was able to kind of dial in that tone a little bit more. There's a little more creepiness in that game, and I think that works well. I couldn't do that if it was just a supplement necessarily.
Yeah, well, cats are, what do you want to say, more aloof and sinister than dogs as a
Yep.
general rule. Like it reflects in the person, like just the personalities of the animals, which you said was kind of one of your core things.
Exactly. Dogs work well together, and that's why I picked D&D. Frankly, was like dogs are pack animals. D&D party design, another piece where that all works together. Cats are more social and have more connection than people give them credit for. But also from a pop culture perspective, yes, cats are individualists. They go off, they do their own thing, they roam the streets at night, they wear leather jackets and smoke cigarettes. That's the archetype we're talking about. And so that's going to lead towards intrigue much more easily. And so we have different political factions and they're doing different things. Each cat has, they work together, but also they have their own interests. And so on the back end, there's different designs as to why that is, like on a large scale. Dog powers generally work better when you help other people out. Cat powers they make yourself cool, and then there might be benefit to the people just kind of by being so cool in proximity to you. But then we have two actual explicit supplements. I have Pirates of Pugmire, which has playable rules for lizards and birds, but it's really the seafaring rules for both Pugmire and Mao. So, I mean, there's a separate city called Waterdog Port, which is kind of an independent city, so neither dogs nor cats control it. There's a whole history as to why that is. And it's more cosmopolitan, so you see more lizards and birds there, and also the kind of, lizards and hotter spaces and birds and tropical. I mean, there's lots of thematic resonances with piracy that I thought.
I'm sorry that you thought what appeared to have dropped out.
Yeah.
Still there, Eddie? Hello?
Methinks we lost him.
We may have. Well, he seemed to be dropping out occasionally here and there.
Yeah.
Hello?
You want to maybe send a private message on Discord?
Yeah.
Should be able to just right click on his face.
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
You're back.
Sorry, my internet just flaked out for a second there.
That's okay.
I wasn't
We
sure
were just
what it
gonna
was.
check on you because mid thought and you dropped.
So where was I at? And I'll start again.
Oh man, you're asking the two guys with ADHD to remember.
Fair enough. Did you get my Pirates of Pugmire stuff?
We were talking about it.
You were
And
saying
that was
about you had spoken about the birds and the lizards. The lizards being more high tempered, and the birds being more tropical.
Then I'll just start again with Pirates of Pugmire, and then you can edit from that point.
Sounds good.
And then there's Pirates of Pugmire, which is a supplement for both Pugmire and Monarchies of Mao. And it has playable rules for lizards and birds, but it's much more kind of piratical adventure. There's a city called Waterdog Port, which is not controlled by either cats or dogs. So it's kind of an independent state, and so it's more cosmopolitan. So there's reasons why there are dogs and cats and lizards and birds there, but also the resonances of like lizards living in hot spaces and tropical birds and whatnot. I thought there was a good resonance with those species in particular being playable there. But really, it's kind of my One Piece homage if I didn't only recently discover One Piece. It wasn't. I was reading One Piece and going, I wish I had read this when I made this book because there's a lot of connection there. But my latest one, and something that you might appreciate, Steve, is Squeaks in the Deep, which is my mouse and rat book, but they are psychic instead of having magic spells.
Oh, nice.
Because I feel like psionics have not been done well since Dark Sun. But also, we have a weirdly large amount of fiction of rats and mice with psychic powers. So, there's like Pinky and the Brain kind of toys with it, the Rats of Nim. There are lots of other things where rats and mice have some kind of strange psychic abilities. And so I wanted to play with that. And that's also kind of my nod to the Mega Dungeon. Where it's like a big, huge underground space called the Underneath, and they all kind of live there. But it's all the cool bits of the Mega Dungeon, which is there's interesting, cool set pieces. But then instead of lots of empty corridors, I literally have just a table of here's 20 random, or 12 random corridors that you can just kind of walk through. And so basically you go, so here's set piece A, and then you go through some weird corridors, maybe have a random encounter, and then now here's set piece B. And that's it. And there's even setting material for like the tunnels shift and move. So there's a reason why there aren't clear maps of stuff. And if you forgot where these things connect up, well, the tunnels moved. Because I think that Mega Dungeon gameplay is interesting, but it had not been meaningfully adapted since the 80s. So I'm always kind of using supplements as a way to kind of also dig into a subsection of D&D gameplay and reinvent that. Because again, like with Pirates, there is been a weird trend of aquatic D&D gameplay that's never quite crystallized. So it's like, I want to take kind of my stab at that. And there are kind of another outer tier of more minor supplements. We have the Roll of Cats and Dogs, which are just basically a bunch of pre-generated characters that are largely derived from some very generous Kickstarter backers. We have Adventures for Curious Cats, which are just another handful of adventures for Monarchies of Mao. We have a couple of anthologies of stories, one of which, the Pugmire one, which is Tales of Good Dogs, was actually edited by James Lauder, who formerly was involved with the TSR fiction division and got some of his TSR alum fiction friends to write for. And then Tales of Curious Cats, or Excellent Cats, which had some more modern writers, but also some establishments. Like one of them, the Mal book, the person who wrote the fiction book Installing Limits on Dead Badger actually did a Dead Badger joke story inside of that anthology, which is amazing. It's a weird Frankenstein riff. It's wonderful. So then I have the ancillary stuff outside of that. Dominic's Path was nice enough to indulge me saying, I want to make a deck builder game using Pugmire. And they're like, okay, what? But I pitched them on it and they were happy with it. So it now exists Fetch Quest, which is basically a light deck builder. Again, let's take what's interesting with deck builder, strip out all of the more complicated stuff and make it introductory level deck building game for people who are intimidated by deck building games. And it's just you go on a quest and you keep going on a quest until you succeed or you fall over and you have to go back home. And then because this is creator owned, I have the ability to take the game in other directions. So I worked on an interactive novel for Pugmire, which done by the company Choice of Games. And basically, it's like Choose Your Own Adventure, but it's on your phone, and the software actually remembers all of your choices. It can track those if they're meaningful. So, for example, for my game, if you consistently pick choices that favor dogs over cats, then cat characters start to look at you differently throughout the course of the game. If you pick choices that are more aggressive than friendly, then your stats will slide towards being a aggressive dog as opposed to a friendly dog. And then at the end, that calculates towards how good of a dog you are at the end. I licensed out to a company that's doing a Monarchies of Mal board game, although they haven't announced much about that yet. I did an interactive audio drama with Pugmire with a company called Earplay, so you could play on your Alexa-enabled devices, or I believe Android phones too. And it's basically an audio drama, but then at certain point in times, the game will prompt you for one of two choices, sometimes three choices, and then you tell the game which of those choices you want to follow, and then it will again remember that and track through, and you can play through an adventure that way. And I got professional voice actors and sound effects and the whole 9 yards. And then some other stuff that is still being discussed, so I don't have anything to kind of announce on that front yet. But yeah, so there's lots of other stuff happening besides just the role-playing game. But really, the role-playing game is kind of the hub where all that's radiating out from.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, I mean, it's very clear, having had this conversation with you, that this is something that you're very passionate about, but at the same time, you've also put a lot of careful thought and really thought about the choices you made at different points with it, and that it's a project that is very much a passion project, but also one you seem to be very driven to make excellent. And
Hmm.
and I think that's, you know, I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody, but I think there's a lot of game design has sort of forgotten that passion and that being willing to nod to where we came from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. When I've worked on over 150 projects, I didn't do 100% on all of them, I'm sure. There's certain games where it's like I wasn't feeling well, or I just fighting with the clients, or I just wasn't feeling the game, and maybe I didn't do my best work. But one thing I have been seeing over my 20 years in the industry is there are lots of amazing young talent who are trying some really fantastically innovative thing, and I applaud them. I am so happy they're here. But one thing I think gets lost sometimes is that the past of our hobby was also intensely innovative. And I think that there's just as much value in looking back at games and going, well, that actually worked in these 70s and 80s designs, rather than just constantly scrapping them and starting forward. So one of the kind of minor goals of a game like this was, here's some interesting stuff you do with D&D besides just slapping a 5e label on it and calling it a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I was quite curious before, and you've only increased that level.
Yes.
so. Before we transition to the next part of the podcast, where can you be found, or where would you like to be found? Any social media, any website? Where can your games be found? Anything that you want to pimp out? Go ahead and feel free to do so.
The easiest way to find information about Pugmire specifically is I have a website called realmsofpugmire.com. So that will take you to all of the currently available stuff for Pugmire that I am aware of. So not only the Onyx Pass stuff, but even the ancillary stuff I've worked on. If people want to see my stuff, my website is my company name, Pugsteady. It's Pugstady. And then that's also my handle on Twitter. So if people want to follow me on Twitter, it generally I post information about my upcoming projects, although just recently I did make a Werewolf the Apocalypse joke, which is weirdly trending. I posted that I want to make a Glasswalker social media mogul, so I can call him like and subscribe. LYCAN. So if you're here for bad jokes, that's definitely also a Twitter account to follow.
See, and also, since you haven't mentioned it, I'll just throw out there, you also participate in a very good media discussion podcast with Chris Spivey, who we've had
Oh,
on as
yes.
well, called Genreless.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. But yes, that Chris Spivey and I decided we wanted something that didn't involve our jobs, so we don't talk about RPGs at all, except for the times when we absolutely do talk about RPGs by accident. But yeah, it's basically we go through each season. We pick a genre of television. So far, we've done space opera, and we're currently in robot mecha anime. And we pick some representative shows and representative episodes in each of those shows, and we just talk about what we think are the best episodes from that, and then kind of deconstruct what does a show do well, what does it do badly, and how does it kind of tie into the genre we're talking about. But a bit like this podcast, it's not really structured. It's more just an excuse to bullshit for an hour and have a tagline at the end. So it's not rigorous by any measure. It's just two people who love media who want like talking about media.
No, yeah, exactly. It is very kind of just two people sitting down and having a good discussion about, like the, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, etc. Yeah, I really enjoy it. So
Thank you. I'm glad you're one of the 3 fans I think that listen to it. Me and Chris being the other ones, but that's fine.
well, hey, you know what? The dirty secret with podcasting is you make it for yourself and just hope other people want to listen to it.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what Chris and I said is like, if you're here for the numbers, we can make a podcast like that. But I don't think either of us had fun with that. But we can make a podcast of fun and it'll find an audience. And it sounds like it's starting to, which is fantastic to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a good show. So I would advise, it's called Genreless. If you search it, it's on pretty much all the major podcatchers, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Google, Apple, Podbean, Genreless at Podbean. No, it's Darker Issue Studios at Podbean.com. But yeah, just search for Genreless Podcast.
Yep, I'll throw a link for it in the show notes
Oh,
and
cheers.
whatnot.
Thanks.
But all right. So with all that, then I think Steve, is it time for Game of the Week?
Game of the Week.
Woohoo!
Game of the Week. Game of the Week.
So, I mean, I know Steve gave you the rundown on how this works. Pick a game that you like. Doesn't have to be new. Doesn't have to be old. Doesn't have to be anything anybody's ever heard of. Could be a board game. I don't really care. It just has to be a game you like.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was just saying that it's like choose your favorite child. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be one of yours either. But would you like one of us to go first, so you get a little bit more of a feel of it, or do you want to just jump in head first?
I'll go first. That's fine. There's this great little game I've heard of called Pugmire. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's fantastic. No,
You know what? It rings a bell. Like I've heard about it recently, but
rings a bell. Dogs get it.
oh, jeez, I wasn't even intending that.
My dog's name is Pavlov. He's a Russian hound. So yeah, brief on Pugmire. That's the secret of Pugmire. If you run it, recognize that the first half hour of the game is just going to be nonstop dog puns, and let players just get through it because it always happens.
Well, I was just going to ask how you made a. I had this thought just a second ago, but how did you make a pirate expansion with Labradors in your game? You couldn't keep them out of the water, like
just throw them in.
That's well, they'll. You don't need to throw them. You just need to get them near water.
Right, I know. They love water.
I had a dog, and he passed a while back, but he was very clearly part lab.
Mm-hmm.
But this dog absolutely hated anything wet.
Really?
Like, if you could imagine, like, if it was raining outside, he did not want to leave the porch. If he had to walk on a wet grass, if you can imagine, and this dog, Steve's seen pictures of him. He lab Rottweiler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big
So
dog.
big chunky dog. But to watch him walk on wet grass, if you can imagine a dog walking and going, "Ooh, icky," that was him.
That is definitely my boxer. She will melt if she gets rain on her. She's convinced.
Cut to my Yorkie Shih Tzu mix, who is like, we got him a kiddie pool for the summer months when we're outside and just hanging out, outside. He will just get in it and lay in the kiddie pool, like you would, like a human would, yeah, this is nice. I like this. I'll just lay here.
That's adorable.
But yeah.
But anyway, game of the week. No, my actual game of the week. I had so many options go through my head. But I forced myself to pick something because I know one of the things y'all do is you have drive-through links, and I know that sweet affiliate money is useful. So I picked something that's actually on drive-through RPG, although I have a backup if you do want to hear it. But when I picked, well, then the one I picked for the clickable option is a great game called Inspiriles. It's another fantasy game. It's another family-friendly fantasy game. So if you like Pugmire, it's probably a game you'll also like. But specifically, it is designed where it's a Celtic-inspired fantasy game, and all the magic uses American and British Sign Language.
I knew
So
I'd
Oh
heard about
wow,
this.
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I knew I'd heard about this.
it's intensely cool because it's really about how to teach kids to normalize using sign language, and it has great. It not only talks about here's how ASL and BSL work. Here's the grammar for it. There's a website you can go to that shows you videos on it, but it also talks about things like deaf culture and how to respectfully portray and talk to deaf people. And it's all through this lens of a very light, fun setting about these what are called pendragons that can manifest different elemental shapes, and they can use elements. Just like, for example, if you want to cast a fire spell at level 1, if you finger spell fire, that gives you a certain level of fire. But then if you actually learn the sign for fire, that makes the fire more effective. And then if you could put fire in a sentence, that actually gives you an higher level of ability. So the more fluent and proficient you become in sign language, the more powerful your magic becomes.
That's fantastic. I love
That-
that. As
that
as
is
someone who
cool.
knows ASL, I love that.
Oh, you do? That's fantastic.
Yeah, I took it in college because they were like, "You need a language," and I'm like, the only one I see here that I actually want to take is this one."
Yeah, I've had hearing loss most of my life, so I took ASL when I was a kid, and I've since forgotten just about everything.
Yeah.
So when I saw this, I immediately backed Kickstarter because yeah, anything that helps people get more comfortable with American and British Sign Language, I am 100% behind.
No, that's
That's
cool.
awesome.
I
Well,
like
Steve, I'm
games-
going to let you go because mine's a goofy one, so
Okay,
that's a
well-
little bit more serious than.
Okay, well, I was just going to say I like games that, what do you want to say, help you learn outside useful things too.
Mhm.
You know, just as a general rule.
Me
But-
and you need to sit down and just write like a car combat game that forces you to learn how to work on your car.
No, because it'll just every other card will be curse the engineers. Okay, this is coming from someone who spent 6 to 8 hours this past weekend putting transmission lines on a vehicle.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
But in any case, this is something that I kind of stumbled on actually through a Kickstarter, although this wasn't the specific game on Kickstarter. That was an expansion for this, and also connects to our little bit of a Palladium diversion earlier in the show. And that is a game called Mutants in the Now, which
Ooh.
is it's from a guy named Julian Kay, and this is not even trying to hide that it is an homage to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I love that game.
But so it's a retro modern take on, mutant animals, like it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the serial numbers filed off and updated from the Palladium system that Eddie and I could probably spend a few hours going, but about.
But STC.
But yeah, it's, the 80s and 90s, they ruled the streets, kick flipping off villainous faces and slipping into the shadows. Then they vanished from the world of tabletop gaming. Yeah, so it calls itself a retro modern retake on mutant animal role playing games. It says 130 species of animals, everything from
Amazing.
earthworms to whales,
Sweet. So I can play my
Pico,
Street Sharks game.
Wolverine.
Yes. You play Street Sharks?
Yeah, I mean, and look, I mean, we all remember the actual Ninja Turtles. Some of us remember, the original role-playing game. And look, it's good for gonzo fun. I mean, this isn't
Oh,
this
yes.
isn't what you built Pugmire for at all, but it's kind of the other side of that animal role-playing.
No, man, if you want a giant penguin with a laser in his head, it sounds like that's the game you want.
Yeah.
130 species, 200 mutation traits, 14 combat styles, psionics, intensely play-tested rules, which could, there were those who claimed that Palladium may have skipped on that part. But anyway.
Neither confirm nor deny.
But yeah, no, this is called Mutants in the Now, and I know by the time this airs, if it hasn't already at the time of recording, there's an expansion called Mutants in the Next that has been released and funded on Kickstarter. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, you know? The name kind of says it all.
I want this so bad now. Remember you were saying before about you buy all the games that you guys talk about? Now I understand. Now I get it.
Yeah, you understand. Yeah, some of the people on the Discord have come to picking on me because I'm like, oh, I bought that. Oh, I'm buying that. Oh, I bought that. No, that's it. You don't understand until you sit down and actually talk about it yourself. How hard it is to be like, no, I don't need it.
Oh my god, they even used the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fonts from the original comic. All right, well, I'm buying this. Thank you. I'm now $15 poorer because of you people. Thank you so much.
Anytime
Well-
you want to come back on, you're welcome to it.
I'm a bankrupt me at this rate.
Well, now that we're on sort of a lighter note, I have a game. Since Pugmire is kind of a D&D-esque game, I have a game that is OSR, OGL type thing. I have Invasion of the Tuber Dudes.
What?
Okay,
I
hang
put it in the
green room chat.
Yep. So I started a garden recently, and I don't know if Drive-Thru knows that I started a garden recently or what, but this is a game. This is a OSR game that they're describing as the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly meets Attack of the Killer Tomatoes mashed up into D&D. It's a game about tuber people attacking villages, from what I can gather.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's all of $3.99 right now.
Attack of the Killer Parsnips.
Yeah.
This is so good. And see, this is the innovation that the 5e space needs right now.
Yeah. But again, this is like OSR stuff, so it's probably a little bit more aimed towards
fair.
Like advanced
D&D we
Dungeons and
remember as
Dragons.
opposed to the one we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's designed to be a minimal preparation one-shot adventure. But yeah, so that's the game I got. I hem-hawed around, and I'm surprised, Steve, that you didn't pick a game that just came out today that we've talked about a lot.
I'm curious now.
Hell Knight.
Oh, I got that earlier in the week.
Yeah, I know, but the actual, it might have officially come out earlier in the week as well. But
now backers, not. I don't think it's officially released yet.
Oh no, it's officially out because I can
is
get it
it?
on Drive-Thru. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm surprised you
yeah.
didn't.
No, that's I've been so busy I haven't gotten more than a chance to flip through it. But that's cool. And well, I posted a screenshot to one of our chats. It's actually in the game text. And this is a game, in case you're not familiar with it, Eddie. It's an 80s demon biker gang RPG.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And it's actually from this Argentinian designer by the name of Gabriel Quiroga. Guy who wrote Warpland, if you've heard of that one.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
But yeah, it's an 80s, think like Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, that kind of thing. But the whole premise of this game is the devil has gone missing, and now you have to go keep things from getting completely out of control because some of the demons have gone off the reservation. But there's a segment in it where he's talking about different power levels for different things, and the top power level is like level 4, level 5, whatever it is. And examples are the Dark Lord himself and Chuck Norris.
Nice.
Yeah, the Gav is such a great game designer. Such a great sense of humor. I'm so excited to get to play that game. But yeah, that one's
I gotta get it read.
It sounds very Grindhouse.
It is. It's
I mean, it's very much I would say, and he himself describes himself as kind of an artist game designer as opposed to a what do you want to say, mechanical game designer. I believe he got some help from I'm blanking on the guy's name now, but the main guy, Johan from Morkborg.
Okay.
Did like a spread or two for him.
Makes sense.
It's very much kind of in that vein, but it's an 80s Doom biker RPG.
Yeah. It's I sent it to a friend of mine, and they were very excited because they're into, for whatever reason, like they think it's funny. Like the best way I could describe it would be like biker Facebook memes that have like
Okay.
the Grim Reaper drawn on them. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, right. Yeah.
Get Back or any of that goofy stuff. They're
Mhm.
very much into that. I sent them this. They were like, oh, this is like good. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Hell Knight's out.
It's the Ghost Rider RPG I've always wanted.
Yeah, maybe it's a little
I'd
different
say
than that though.
it's not tending to it's Demon Knight, The Crow,
Oh, okay.
you know, he's
You know,
got a
you ever see the 80s movie The Wraith with Charlie Sheen?
It does ring a faint bell.
Okay. Yeah. I watched that recently and I was thinking of Hell Knight because it's a movie about a guy that comes back from the dead to get revenge. And I was like, that's very Hell Knight.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
but yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah, so what was your other one that you had?
Oh, it's more off topic, but there are a collection of board games called Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, where basically it's it's kind of choose your adventure in the sense of you're given an opening scenario and then you have to look up where on a map and a directory where to go to investigate the next clue, and then you look up that code and then you read that text and get information. But the company that makes those just did a Call of Cthulhu version called Bureau of Investigation. And that's really interesting because it has a lot more props. It's set in 20s Boston, although you can also go to Arkham and some other places that are they're common in the Cthulhu mythos. But you pick when you go to a certain location to investigate it, you choose either the white code, which is you're investigating it normally, or the black code if you're investigating the occult side of it. And that changes what happens in the game. And then there are certain cases that unfold differently depending on how you perceive reality and whatnot. So it's I haven't played it yet, but it looks really interesting. There's like a smidge of legacy game in there, which is really fascinating.
What's that called again?
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective : Bureau Investigation. It just came out like a few weeks ago. I just got it in the mail and I opened it up and it's like, anybody want to play with this? And it's like, everyone's got COVID, so I can't play it yet. So I put it back down. But
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, check that out with our board game friends. But well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a really wonderful conversation.
I had a lot of fun. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yep. As always, links to everything are in the show notes. Well, everything within reason. You could, find us everywhere podcasts are found, and then Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Patreon, and soon to be in person at the Pittsburgh Gaming Expo. That's October 1st and 2nd. So keep an eye out for us there. We want to thank you for listening and remind you to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Bye.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.
All right. I think. Oh, one other question, just in case I know you're real good friends with Chris. Did you actually work on Haunted West? I haven't bothered to look in the credits page.
I did some consulting and review forms. I didn't write on it, but I did kind of, look through it and offer some advice.
Okay. I just, didn't want to blurt it out and then have you go, well, no, really.
Awkward.
Because, I only have, the hard copy in the drawer right next to me, but...
That's really far away. I get it.
Yeah, well, I'd actually have to move the chair to get the drawer open. So.
Oh, that's okay. That is actually genuinely far away.
Oh, I like your sense of humor.
Hey, I am the guy who's like, I have a DVD for that TV show somewhere, but it's all the way in the other room, so I'm just going to go ahead and find it online and stream it instead.
Yes. I
actually
have
did
the
that the other
DVDs
night.
for that series, but that would entail hooking up the DVD player.
Right.
It's right here in front of me. I could just click on this button that says
Yeah, it's play.